I just watched a Coke commercial about a 100-year-old Filipino man who gives his take on life. It starts out with him leaving his village on a boat and him talking about how lucky he was to be born and to have family and friends. Then it shows him getting on a plane, and it cuts to what appears to be his granddaughter or great-granddaughter giving birth. He then begins to give his advice, which is go find what makes you happy. He talks about how time flies so fast that we should not waste it on nonsense. Then he goes on to say, no matter where you end up, do not forget where you came from. He arrives at the hospital to see the newest member of the family. He goes on to say how he has really enjoyed his 100 years of life with his family and friends and realizes that 100 years is just not enough time. Of course, the commercial ends with him back at his home village, spending time with his family and drinking Coca-Cola. While this was a great commercial that had a good message, it was a worldly one which did not include God. Don't get me wrong, I love the message that is taught in it because the basic message can be found in the Bible. We are truly blessed to be born and to have family and friends. Of course, none of this would be possible without God because He created us and set everything into motion. As the man said, we should go find what makes us happy. But this is a vague statement that could include anything. We know that God has given us a free will, and He will allow us to choose whatever path we want. For example, notice what God allowed people to do as recorded by Paul in Romans 1 and verse 26. For this reason, God gave them up to vile passions, for even their women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. Likewise, also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust for one another, men with men, committing what is shameful, and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error, which was due. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting, being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. They are whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful, who, knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only do the same, but also approve of those who practice them. While God will allow you to choose what makes you happy, you must understand that there are severe consequences when you allow sinful things to make you happy. As Christians who love God, when we seek things out to make us happy, they should be righteous things. As Paul wrote in Philippians 4 and verse number 8, finally, brethren, whatever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are of good report, if there is any virtue, if there is anything praiseworthy, meditate on these things. The things which you learned and received and heard and saw in me, these do, and the God of peace be with you. The man in the commercial gave great advice about how time flies and how we should not waste our time on nonsense. This is also true when it comes to spiritual matters. Again, Paul writes in Titus 3 and verse 9, but avoid foolish disputes, genealogies, contentions, and strivings about the law, for they are unprofitable and useless. Reject a divisive man after the first and second admonition, knowing that such a person is warped and sinning, being self-condemned. I also agree that we should remember where we came from no matter where we end up. While I believe this man meant this from a different perspective, I agree with the principle. From a spiritual point of view, we need to remember that we came from God. Without Him, we would not exist. To remember where we came from will help us focus on God. As the man said, it is wonderful to spend time with family and friends, but it is even more important that we spend time with God and living our lives for Him, according to Matthew 10, verses 37 through 38. He is also correct that 100 years does not seem like enough time, but as Christians, we can know that no matter how much time we have on this earth, if we live for God, we will have eternity in heaven. And we can spend eternity with all our family and friends who are willing to live faithfully to God in accordance to His Word. I realize this was just a Coke commercial, but it would have been much more touching to have God in the picture and the hope that He offers. So enjoy your family and friends, but never leave God out of your lives.